on the JFK Partners website, along with the other webinars in this transition series. We will also post the handouts for today, which you are welcome to print or save for future reference. Following the webinar, you will receive a link requesting an evaluation. You may request a certificate of attendance in the evaluation, and we really appreciate you being sure to do that. Today's speakers are Dr. Tiffany Cron, Brian Dean, and Joseph Samore. Dr. Tiffany Cron is curriculum developer, person-centered thinking trainer, and data lead for the Colorado Office of Employment First. She is a well-respected leader in the field of disability, having over 15 years of experience working with people with disabilities to live the life that they desire. Her educational background includes a PhD in general psychology with an emphasis in cognition and instruction. She holds a master's in educational psychology and a BA in psychology. Tiffany is driven by the belief and value that all people have the right to work, and that support does not come in a one-size-fits-all model. So Brian Dean has 6 years of experience in the field of rehab counseling and is a certified rehabilitation counselor. He has prior experience before his master's in the field as well. Brian is the rehabilitation counselor, discipline director for the leadership education in neurodevelopmental and related disabilities program, LEND, through JFK Partners at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus. Brian is certified as a trainer and mentor in the evidence-based informed practice of customized employment, and has a focus area in the training strategies for people with disabilities. Our third speaker is Joseph Samore, who is the rehabilitation counseling trainee for the JFK Partners 22-23 LEND program. Now in his second year of study for a Master's of Arts in Rehabilitation Counseling at the University of Northern Colorado. Joseph is being equipped with tools and techniques to aid in improving the quality of life for individuals with mental and physical disabilities, addressing psychological, social, vocational, and cultural aspects of rehabilitation. After graduation, Joseph will obtain certification as a rehabilitation counselor and seek licensure as a professional counselor. His biggest ambition is to someday open a private practice focused on holistic treatment for a variety of clientele, and he is confident that the LEND opportunity will bring him one step closer to making this ambition a reality. So I just want to express our appreciation for all three speakers and look forward to hearing from them and then your participation in the question and answers section. So with that, I'll turn it over to whoever is leading.
Thank you so much, Corey. We appreciate that wonderful introduction. So welcome everyone to today's webinar on innovative employment methods and quality of life today on February 23rd of 2023. We're very excited to have you here and appreciate your attendance in today's session. So I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, Brian Dean, to get us started in today's presentation. Thank you.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Just to start us off, wanted to introduce you all to the Colorado Office of Employment First. And our vision is really looking at that culture of inclusive and meaningful employment for all people. And to get there and to do this is through our mission and looking at that equitable employment for all people with disabilities, really focusing on three main pillars and a lot of areas underneath these pillars as well, looking at collaboration, partnerships, systems innovation, as well as training excellence within there. Really looking at those evidence-informed, evidence-based, and promising practices as well. which we'll talk about today. As we mentioned, and just want to highlight, the Colorado Office of Employment First is proudly part of JFK Partners through the University of Colorado, the School of Medicine, through an interagency agreement in partnership with the Colorado Division of Vocational Rehabilitation as well. Outside of today, we're here, we're available, we're accessible to all of you, state agencies, community center boards, other program or approved service agencies, advocacies, individuals and their families with disabilities as well. We're here to support, provide information. So again, outside of today, if you have questions or want to connect, please feel free to outreach us as well. And the purpose of the LIN program, the program that with JFK Partners that our other speaker, Joseph, is a part of, is really looking at to improve the health and well-being of individuals with autism spectrum disorder, as well as other neurodevelopmental disabilities, and preparing professionals through this interdisciplinary approach to take leadership roles around services, improving systems, and building inclusive communities as well. And we're very excited to be a part of LIND, to be a part of JFK Partners, and Joseph here today, which you'll hear in the last portion of our webinar. We have three main objectives. So the first today, and related to our title of our webinar, I want to talk about and understand the connection between employment and health outcomes. What's the relationship? How does work and health, how do they interact? How is that beneficial for all people, especially and including individuals with disabilities as well? We're going to do an exploration. We're going to explore, we're going to introduce you likely, or maybe you are familiar with some philosophies and methods, not only around employment, but also around learning, and tying in and making the connections with those to understand how these methods tie into health and quality of life for people and individuals with disabilities as well. And likely the most exciting part of today is our third objective. We're gonna have you participate in a demonstration around gamification, and Joseph's gonna talk with you about that as well. I'm gonna transition it over to Tiffany.
Thank you, Brian. So the first area that we want to kind of talk a little bit about is employment first and the social determinants of health in general. So you might be thinking, what is employment first? And so employment first, and Brian, you can go to the next slide, is a belief and value that all individuals, regardless of the level of disability, are capable of full inclusion and working in competitive integrated employment. And we use the phrase competitive integrated employment as a new distinction between former models of employment that really focuses on like equal work for equal pay and opportunities for advancement, who they're working with. It's not in a segregated environment. There's inclusion. It exists out in the community, and opportunities to all of the fabulous benefits that come with working. So competitive integrated employment is the first and preferred outcome, regardless of the level of disability. Again, in that community setting with regular compensation, equal advancement, equal interaction with their coworkers, those that have disabilities and those that do not. And when we're thinking about employment first, it is a systems change. It's a shift in the culture. We're moving forward, we're progressing, we're constantly reevaluating practices and how things have happened in the past. And we want to improve, we want to get better. So we're changing towards moving the needle forward, especially here in Colorado for our state. We're looking at policies, we're looking at the way we're delivering services, and we're aligning service funding between different entities to really help and increase those outcomes that are helping us reach competitive integrated employment. So by and large, Colorado is very invested in employment first. They created an employment first advisory partnership that has helped to bring these state agencies together to help employment first move forward, and then helped to initiate our office, the Colorado Office of Employment First. And so it's not, if you're thinking about employment first going, oh, I think it's just a training, I attended that, and it's a check the box thing. It is not that. It's not a training, not a check the box. It is a belief, it's a philosophy, it's a value, and it's a way that we infuse it into all aspects of our work. Next slide, please. So why is employment first so important? Well, Most importantly, there is a disparity in the individuals that are employed that have a disability. Far, far, far less. Here, the national core indicators are indicating 85% of individuals that have a disability or a significant disability are unemployed or underemployed. Additionally, according to the IPS Employment Center, 65% of individuals with significant mental illness want to work, but only 2% have access to an evidence-based supported employment program. So very important to increase knowledge and, of course, have our office be that entity that can help provide that training, provide that evidence-based training. Then again, looking on the right, we have a table that outlines disability type and participation rate in employment. And individuals with a cognitive disability is around a 15%. A mental disability, they're participating in employment around 25%. Any disability is around 34%. So we're getting higher. But then when you compare that with people that do not have disabilities that participate in employment, that's at 80%. 80% of the workforce of people that don't have disabilities are out there working. And we're just not seeing that for individuals with disabilities. So we want to impact that. Employment First is going to help change that, change the mindset, help change mistruths and myths that are out there regarding Employment First. Next slide, please. So making the connection then to health and why Employment First is important in this conversation. So it is a social determinant of health. And when we're talking about social determinants of health, these are conditions in the environment in which people are born, they live, they learn, work, play, worship, and it's going to have an impact and an effect on the quality of their life. So on screen is a little model of the social determinants of health that include things such as your neighborhood, your built-in environment, your health and health care, which can include Medicaid and other benefits, social and community context, your education, and then this last one here on the far left is the economic stability. Really, really important. Many individuals with disabilities are living in poverty. And when you're living in poverty, many areas of your life can suffer, including your health. And employment provides the necessary funding for food, clothing, shelter. And when a person with disability does not have access to the right funding, the right employment, the right opportunities, it can have a trickle-down effect. So very, very important that we're looking at this connection between how important being economically stable by having employment is going to impact health. Next slide. Diving a little bit deeper here into kind of those outcomes that can happen. And so unemployment, by virtue of not being employed, can have negative health consequences, as I mentioned. People might delay going to see a doctor or getting help when they aren't feeling well. Those that are unemployed report feelings of depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and demoralization. Where's their purpose? We find purpose and meaning in our work. Unemployed individuals tend to suffer more from stress-related illnesses such as high blood pressure, stroke, heart attack, heart disease, and arthritis. The job benefits, the perks of being employed are numerous. These are just a few. So oftentimes health insurance that's paid by the employer, if not in full, partially. The ability to have paid sick time so that they can leave their job to go take care of themselves, and accrual of time off for even a nice work-life balance, parental leave options. There's just so many really great benefits. Ability to save for retirement and not have to work forever. There's also periods of economic recession are possibly associated with higher prevalence of mental health and substance use disorders and other physical health concerns. So employment is incredibly important. And every day we're really thinking through how to help people find employment, find meaningful employment, and pursue their vision for their career down the path. So really, really important. The next slide talks a little bit about engaging in opportunities that can reduce healthcare costs, namely employment, a big way to help reduce that. So Medicaid health costs can be reduced by $161 per member per month when members were engaged in employment support program. Employment can help to achieve greater health equity for people with disabilities, and many employment supports are available through federal and state programs. So there's a lot of support, vocational rehabilitation, there's the home and community-based services waivers that really can help to support getting the right services to then find that right job match. Really, really important. So next slide, please. When we're considering employment first and the ideas and how important this is, and I think we can all agree it is absolutely essential, it is important, then we also must consider in that same exact conversation the idea and belief in zero exclusion, which also means full inclusion, that all people that are interested in working have the access to employment services, regardless of job readiness factors, symptoms, history of violent behaviors or prior convictions, cognition impairments, treatment or non-adherence to treatment, or personal presentation. That it's the criteria really that says it's full inclusion, that all people with disabilities are integrated into the workforce and into their communities. And when we are in meetings and we're collaborating, and if we're ever in a meeting saying, oh, I don't think somebody's ready, I don't think somebody can work, and there's any of those negative thoughts, that means we have not yet bought into this belief and are fully invested in that, yes, everybody can work that wants to work. So zero exclusion and full inclusion really go hand in hand with promoting employment first. And so we want to tie this in, that it all relates to not lose sight of that fact. It's for everyone. Next slide. Some innovative approaches and philosophies and methods are our next section, and I'm going to get this kicked off before I hand it back over to Brian. So on this next slide, we're talking about really two approaches and philosophies that we can think about when we want to be innovative, and how are we going to get this done. So self-determination, really, really important in helping an individual to get to know themselves. What is it that they like? What is it that they don't like? And experience is the best teacher of beginning to understand that, of, learning ourselves and what do we want to do. So the ability to know and believe in oneself towards achieving something that is wanted is what self-determination means. And this is what's going to help contribute to their positive life outcomes, such as having a job, pursuing education or advanced education, community living, and just general improved quality of life, living independently in the community, those sorts of things, reducing needed supports and increasing their own independence. And one way to do that is by harnessing a person-centered belief and philosophy. So it's a belief and mindset that all people are to remain in charge and at the center of all decisions regarding their life, that we are treating individuals as the experts in their own life. We've never lived in their shoes, and they have the opportunity to voice their opinion and have that self-determination and self-advocate. And when we're doing that, it really does empower people to not only get comfortable with sharing what they want, what they don't want, they're going to start sharing more often. So we're going to have better, richer conversations when we establish a person-centered relationship with those that we're working with. So one really great technique in order to help us get to having some significant outcomes related to employment first. And then on the next slide, we're going to transition to some methods. And Brian, I'm going to kick it back to you on this slide.
Great, thanks, Tiffany. So we've talked, Tiffany, we discussed employment first, and it's this belief. So I want to touch on, yes, that's a belief, but what does that look like? What are the strategies or approaches that we can utilize that support individuals toward their goal around that belief that they can work? So I want to start with customized employment. Customized employment, you may have heard of it. It's really this universal employment strategy for anyone, all people, especially people with disabilities, that really focuses on what we call using flexible strategies towards competitive and integrated employment. These flexible strategies, like Tiffany mentioned, and through self-determination, through person-centeredness, is understanding who is this person? What do they do in their daily life? And one piece of customized employment, one of our essential components, is it's a no-fail process. Again, that presumes everyone can work. So we're tying this in to employment first, to that belief. It's a key component within this method because a person cannot fail at their life. We need to understand what works for them and what sets them up for success, and how we can translate that into work through understanding their strengths, their skills, their interests, their needs and supports for success. What support do they receive, and how does that set them up for success? And what do we need to avoid that's not going to set them up for success, right? We all have things that we avoid because we know it's not going to set us up for success. And then on the right, this is systematic instruction. And I'm going to introduce this here. We'll talk a little bit more because it's super important, and it's going to tie into Joseph's, a way of that Joseph's going to talk about later. It kind of falls within this approach. Systematic instruction is a process of teaching any learner a new task. And it's based on matching the learning style of people that we're working with and methods that we're utilizing to provide them that instruction. And similar to customized employment, similar to employment first, it has this underlying premise that everyone can and is capable of learning, regardless of IQ score, regardless of what a medical documentation may say or an evaluative assessment might say. It presumes competency on behalf of the learner. And within this, it's important to know that we want to match the use of information or instructional strategies or cues to that learning, to that individual. This can be in employment. This can be outside of employment as well. This could be in the home, in the community, as people are learning new tasks, because we're all learners across a variety of different environments. So systematic instruction was founded by Dr. Mark Gold, and Dr. Mark Gold was a special education teacher back in the 60s and 70s, and he founded this term, try another way. Again, that presumed competence that all people could work through that values-based systematic instruction model. And Dr. Gold believed that his students had more potential than anyone thought, that all people with disabilities should have the opportunity to live full lives, that everyone can learn. Again, we just need to figure out how to teach them. And this is where try another way started to come into play here, and where that was developed and established. And again, it's the process of transferring the correct image in your head to the trainee's performance. How do we train? How do we teach someone to learn something new? And how do we translate that to the individual? And part of this too, Dr. Gold had developed a 7-phase sequence, which looks at how do we understand and balance the natural ways, specifically in the workplace. How do they train not only the individual with a disability, but how do they train all employees, and matching that as well, tying into that full inclusion, that the individual gets the same training that anyone else does within that employment. And we can do that within the home and other areas as well. How do people learn? How does that training occur? You know, Dr. Gold founded Mark Gold and Associates, and unfortunately he passed away in the 80s, and that was taken over by Michael Callahan. And they still do and still promote and train on systematic instruction to the philosophies of Dr. Gold today. Mike actually did retire, and now Therese Fimian is the president of Mark Gold and Associates. So let's look at some training strategies, right? When we understand learning styles and other variables, this allows us to adjust our training or our instruction on how to teach that anyone can learn. So for example, if the individual is a visual or auditory learner, how well does that person sequence tasks? How many instructions can a person handle before maybe they start to mix things up or start to forget things? Or how does that person handle interruption? Okay, these are all things that we want to look at and we want to understand to ensure that we're matching to their learning as well. Visual, some examples, right? Lists, graphs, flashcards, or if someone's more verbal, writing or presenting. Auditory is really, do they learn more best through lecture, or do they learn through music? Or are they more social learners, right? Through that collaboration, that teamwork, working in teams? Or are they solitary, independent, learning by themselves, spending time just to dive in and focus? Or that physical learning through hands-on or movement, and logical through patterns or statistics? We also talk about learning. The area we want to focus on and be aware of is technology. Technology can be easy, can be accessible to support learning for all individuals through completing tasks, again, at home or working in that competitive environment alongside their peers as well. What's great about technology is that it's a non-intrusive support, right? Think about smartphones, think about tablets. They're small, they're easy to come out. They're individualized for the person, they're individualized for the environment, and they can be individualized for the task. So that could be using a task list on the phone, it could be utilizing an alarm clock. Functions on smartphones or smartwatches as well, different notifications. Maybe it's noise canceling headphones to help that person focus in and eliminate any distractions or background noise that might become distracting to them. There's other paid applications and there's other free applications as well. When talking assistive technology, when talking to technology as support, there's also assistive technology. And assistive technology is used for people with disabilities to accomplish or perform tasks or essential functions that might otherwise be difficult or impossible. And this may include low-tech or high-tech options. Maybe it's a communication device or some other form of technology that they utilize. One resource that we have here in Colorado is the University of Colorado Center for Inclusive Design and Engineering. It's an assistive technology program. They provide assessments, evaluations on devices, as well as training. We do have a resource slide at the end with the link to the website for the Center for Inclusive Design and Engineering as well. Another great resource around technology accommodations, really any information, is the Job Accommodation Network. It's a robust database full of information, and they also has information around COVID and employment around and working with employers and navigating COVID as well. And that's askjan.org. That resource is also linked on the resource slide for you all as well. With that, I'm gonna shift and I'm gonna transfer it over to Joseph and have him talk to you in a little bit more detail around gamification and thinking of learning strategies and this presumed competence that we've been talking, that underlying theme as well.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Give me just 1 second here. All right, can everybody see this? I hope that's a yes. I'm going to go with that.
We can.
Great. All right, so if we're going to talk about gamification in serious games, I'm actually going to need a little bit of help. So without further ado, this is Martino. He's going to help us out through our journey through gamification in serious games. What's the first thing? Just be careful. He's a bit of a show-off. Welcome to gamifying employment and other activities for people with neurodevelopmental disabilities. Let's get started. So, just a couple of disclaimers. This presentation serves as a call to attention for gamified interventions, and it provides an exploratory look at the use of gamification within and outside of vocational rehabilitation. It does not claim full knowledge of the use of gamification within rehabilitation. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome, adventurers. The magical wizard Anti-Bore has enchanted this webinar and scattered my gear. Help me research gamification and serious games as they relate to employment, and we'll get my stuff back in no time. Thanks and good luck. Martina. Oh, be prepared to play, everybody. All right, these are our missions. First, we must find the coin of difference, whereas we discuss and define gamification, serious games, and their utility. Next, we must search for the sword of motivation. exploring why gamification works, specifically through intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And then we have to find the shield of evidence, where we examine research surrounding gamified interventions in and out of jobs. Finally, we must find the key of understanding by observing unstudied applications and addressing areas for future research in gamification. All right, just say in the chat, we have to find the right pattern in order to continue. In the chat, can somebody just say, 1, 2, or 3, or 4? Oh. I hear,
You
oh, wow.
have
I hear it all across the board.
4, 3, 1, 1, 2.
Well,
and
whoever said
4.
3, great work. You got the right one. All right, let's keep going. So first we have to discuss gamification versus serious games. Gamification is the infusing of game design elements in game context. This is put by a video from Gamify. Gamify is a company that was developed by one of the only PhDs in gamification design. So we have to go to the source here. And I have this picture of Mary Poppins here because within the video, he quotes Mary Poppins saying, "In every job that must be done, there is an element of fun. You find the fun and snap, the job's a game." If anybody remembers that part of the movie, it was right before a spoonful of sugar or whatever. But he's saying that she was on the right track with gamification. We have to put those elements of gamification within the non-game context in order for it to work. Over on the other side, we have serious games, and I have a picture of Reader Rabbit here. That was something that when I was a kid, I played a lot, and it had a very special place. But a serious game is a game built with the serious goal of education. At the bottom here, I just have a quick note that often within the realm of gamification, serious games are used because video games have become mainstream, while smartphones have made games accessible anywhere. Do they actually work? And I love this quote from Batista and Oliveira. Gamification is gaining increasing presence and importance in our daily lives, applications, and services and businesses. What this also says is that this is a multidisciplinary approach. According to Batista and Oliveira, gamification and other, just 1 second there, get rid of that. And serious games have been used in at least 19 different discipline fields. And the most relevant fields to the population of rehabilitation counseling, at least for the purposes of this study, are health and education. Education, looking at Kim et al., the study looked at students and observed different gamer type experience, 20 different types, as well as 8 gamer types, which shows kind of the breadth of what gamification can include, as well as how different games can be experienced. In health, there were the study from Fleming et al. Showed multiple studies from very systematic reviews displaying gamification in games to be feasible, but needing more research. With that, we got the coin of difference. Good job, everybody. We got the first one. Let's continue. Let's address motivation. Why do games work? According to Chow in his TED Talk in 2014, he developed something called the ectalysis, which goes over 8 core motivations behind gaming. And the first one, we have epic meaning and calling, the idea that you're a part of something bigger. And the example that he provided was Pain Squad, where kids with cancer would participate in a game where they've addressed their pain, and they would rate their pain, and the whole mentality around it was that you are part of something bigger by being part of this pain squad. Next, we have development and accomplishment. Development and accomplishment is that feeling of you are accomplishing things, so you want to keep going. This is what happens with Nike Fit or Nike Plus. You get a little guy dancing around, and you have, as soon as you reach a mile marker or something like that. Next, we have empowerment of creativity and feedback. That is what happens with Legos, and that was an example that Chow provided. But I also think about Minecraft and kind of being able to see your entire world virtually being built up from literally from the ground up. So next we have ownership and possession. Ownership and possession was portrayed by Chow as a Dragon Box game, where it was a math game where you had to learn algebra through this dragon getting these different numbers. He can only come out and eat food once he all these distasteful numbers were gone. Next, we also have social influence and relatedness. The example that I provided was through, has anybody been to Orange Theory, where they have the giant leaderboard and you get to see everybody going back and forth between each other? That shows social influence or relatedness. You're competing against each other. Next, we have scarcity and impatience. This is the idea, the motivation that you do not have it, but it's going to be gone soon. This is what happens, especially with gambling not with gambling, with countdowns. So, for example, Kickstarter was the one that Chow used, where you can count. There is a countdown before this certain item is gone, and then you can't have it. Then you have unpredictability and curiosity, where that drives, a lot of game. This is where the one that drives gambling and whatnot. For this one, he provided an example of the speed cam lotto. So the speed cam would capture people's speeds, and then they were entered into a lottery where the person who it was randomly assigned would get all the money that was paid off from the speed cam. It's very interesting. Last, we have loss and avoidance. Within loss and avoidance, it's exactly how it sounds. You do not want to lose what you have, and you actually want to avoid something that's bad. Within the octalysis, he also split it between two halves. Extrinsic tendency, meaning that it's an external factor that's motivating you. So in other words, those are the items of development and accomplishment, ownership and possession, as well as scarcity and impatience. And then you also have intrinsic tendency, meaning you don't need external factors to kind of be motivated. And that includes empowerment, creativity, and feedback, along with social influence of relatedness and unpredictability and curiosity. We also have white hat gamification and black hat gamification, where these two are split up between white hat showing this is something that you want, whereas black hat being this is something you want to avoid. You don't want something bad. But really, to understand these concepts, let's take it out of the gamification concepts. We have a potion predicament. Martino has been poisoned, and he needs a healing potion to be saved and get his sword back. Figure out which ingredients he needs by matching the scenario to the core motivation displayed by a person with a neurodevelopmental disability, or ND. First up, we have James with ASD. He expressed to his counselor that he feels excited about attending a work party later in the week. He put in extra hours over the week because, according to his leaderboard, he was in last place for productivity. After leaving work yesterday, he saw he was in third place. What does this show? 1, social influence and relatedness. 2, unpredictability and curiosity. Or 3, loss and avoidance. Go ahead and put it in the chat. Also, it's important to note that these are all hypothetical situations. These are not real situations. Let's take a look. Yeah, excellent. I see a lot of number ones. Great work. Number 2, or I'm sorry, scenario 2, I should say. Lily with IDD had dark circles under her eyes and was nodding off during her meeting with her counselor. She did not say anything was wrong, though. After getting permission from Lily, the counselor called her employer and found out that she put in many more hours the last week. He mentioned that he threatened to cut her hours after taking too long with an administrative task. What does this best show? The core motivation of epic meaning and calling, number 1. Number 2, ownership and possession. Or 3, loss and avoidance. Let me see. Yeah, 3, number 3. Great work, everybody. It does show loss and avoidance. She did not want to lose her hours. And the third one, Francis with Down syndrome enters his counseling meeting with a grin on his face. His counselor comments on it, and Francis tells him that he just got a call back from an informational technology employer that offered him an internship. Francis says, I know it's just paperwork and copies, but I still get to help people in a field that I want to do. What does this show? Number 1, epic meaning and calling. Number 2, scarcity and impatience. Or 3, empowerment of creativity and feedback. Whoa. Yeah, I see a bunch of ones. Well done. It is number 1. Congratulations, we got the sword of motivation. let's keep going. Oh boy, we got some mushroom menaces up here. After recovering from poison and obtaining the sword of motivation, Martino now ventures to the Temple of Research, where he hopes to once again find his shield of evidence. But alas, strange talking mushrooms have grown over the source step entrance. They must be cut down by examining the research. The first mushroom says, "Show us you're worthy to get the shield. We each represent a gamified study for a population with ND, neurodevelopmental disabilities. To get through, you'll have to examine how gamification has been used to help the physical health of people with ND and decide which study could best help the overall physical health of individuals with ND in the workforce. Cut down the mushroom that represents that study and we'll both disappear." Seems fair enough. You examine the store step beneath the mushrooms to find two studies. The first one is from McGarty et al., which this is the go-to-play intervention feasibility study. The goal of the study was to help children with IDD get a minimum of 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity outdoors, using 30 minutes of structured games, which address movement skills, so learning those different movement skills, and then 30 minutes of free play, addressing social interaction. It consists of 21 kids, 7 to 12 years old, verified to have IDD through an assessment called the CADES-Q, across 2 schools. It was mostly male and it ranged from, and the weights measured from underweight to obese. In the results, we have 100% recruitment and retention rates. They also mentioned that there were existing relationships to school, so this could have affected that, as well as 90% attendance to sessions, where the mean session time was 40.60 minutes. This was to account for the students getting changed into their gear. 3 out of 4 tests used determined that the intervention was feasible, with the last test, the playground observation of peer engagement, being an unsuitable tool. In the next study, so that's study number 1. Number 2, we have the study from Kim et al., which is an app iterative design inquiry for Puzzle Walk. Puzzle Walk is an app that allows adults with ASD to become more physically active through gamifying behavior change techniques. In the study overview, they go over previous research, where they go through what behavior change technique is, gamification, as well as mobile technology as it informed their work. Then we have development procedures, where the authors discuss direct research with the autism spectrum community, somewhere around 200 participants, and then multiple prototypes that utilized feedback and analyzed usability through evaluation. Future implications were also mentioned as part of the overview, where the app was designed based off of feedback provided in the development procedure. As a result, the app was determined to be readily applicable and an adjunct intervention for people to increase physical activity for adults. Larger studies were implicated as a next step. Now, the second mushroom asks, which of our gamified studies could best help the overall health of people with ND, neurodevelopmental disabilities, in the workforce? Would you guys say it was mushroom 1, go to play, or mushroom 2, puzzle walk? Put it in the chat. Yeah, number 2. Nicely done. You cut down the second mushroom and both of them disappear with a scream of terror. All right, now we've entered inside the Temple of Research. Entering the Temple of Research, we find a note. Martino, well done on making it this far. I hope you enjoyed my enchanted mushrooms. They provided the practice you will need to get your shield back. Hope you choose the right tunnel. Anti-war. So, above 2 tunnels, you see 2 studies on display. Both are gamified interventions, but there's a distinction in how they could help with vocational training. Let's take a look. Above tunnel number 1, we have the study from Willis et al., where there were game-based assessments for individuals with ASD, or autism spectrum disorder, seeking jobs. They examined the use of 3 games called Disco Numbers, Shape Dance, and Digit Span by testing a null hypothesis. So a quick definition here. A null hypothesis is when you're trying to prove that no differences occur in a study. Usually within a study, you are trying to prove that a difference occurs, but something significant about the study was that they were trying to prove the opposite. They were trying to prove that there would be no difference between scores who are neurotypical, of people who are neurotypical and people who are neurodiverse, specifically with autism spectrum disorder. Participants included 586 culturally diverse college-age participants, 263 of which had ASD. The method was to split the participants into 4 groups to include 2 packages. The first package was Disco Numbers and Shape Dance, where it was a memory and math game. Sorry, let me go over this a little bit better. Disco Numbers is a memory and math-based game, whereas Shape Dance is a visual spatial ability game. Package 2 is Digit Span and Shape Dance. Digit Span was a memorization game, whereas Shape Dance, again, was that visual spatial game. They were measured on 0 to 5 true interval scales. The results, the hypothesis was only partially supported. What they found was that package 1, the null hypothesis could not be proved because there were significant differences between people who had ASD and people who were termed neurotypical. And then but package 2, the second group, where Digispan and Shape Dance was used, they did find a null hypothesis to be true. There were not significant differences in the scores. And this was used as a hiring process. They do mention many limitations, but of particular note, they did mention that it's difficult to prove a null hypothesis, and that during the one-way interviews, part of the process that came before the game, people may have, with ASD, may have been drained of cognitive resources. But that's study number 1. So this is tunnel 1. Let's go to tunnel number 2. In the study from Tan et al., there was a gamified augmented reality game for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It was a 10-week gamified augmented reality platform to train individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They were testing the feasibility and the accessibility through both participants and trainers while measuring changes in vocational and cognitive skills of participants. The participants were 15 people with IDD, and exclusions of those include those who could not speak English or who had co-occurring epilepsy for reasons of the game being too intense. The method was to implement 4 training scenarios focused on work etiquette, sandwich making, serving drinks, and cashiering. They used the augmented reality games to enhance vocational ability of patients, or the REAP program. This was a pilot study, so this is one of the first study that was used. They used the Cognistat test, which is a neurobehavioral exam to determine a baseline for participants, and then they can move through scenarios as beginner, intermediate, or advanced. It was after this intervention was complete, they used semi-structured user feedback interviews given to both participants and trainers. So both participants and trainers could give feedback on how the games went. As a result, the intervention was received with positivity overall. Vocational skills, along with soft skills, and self-regulation skills and cognitive skills were shown to have been learned. Of particular note, since it was a trainer-participant experience, there was commentary about desiring a second player, which I just thought that was interesting, that the trainer said that there should be a second player so that they could help the person with IDD in the process. Now, which tunnel represents gamification of vocational screening? Tunnel 1, where it talks about assessment, or tunnel 2, discussing the employment process? Okay, I see tunnel 2. All right, Ellen, you actually got it right. It was number 1. Sorry to call it out, but it was study number 1. All right, now we have the shield of evidence. We got it. Now, after exiting the Temple of Research, Anti-Bohr appears with 3 of his apprentices. Bravo, Martino. You have learned gamification, serious games, and their application well. To get back to your precious key of understanding, listen to my 3 apprentices who bring news of real, yet unstudied interventions. So these are examples of different conversations that I've had throughout the last couple of months of people who have tried different gamified interventions but there's no evidence behind them quite yet, or at least that I have found. First up, we have financial. In this one, people with IDD learned about the importance of money management and financial health through mini games. It was not a full game, rather it was part of a larger curriculum given by the Financial Health Institute. This was after personal communications with Joanne McLean from Financial Health Institute. The game that she showed me was Kiki's clothing shopping game. The player with IDD is, given a set amount for creating an outfit. Every time the money was spent, the wall would decrease by that amount. By the end of the mini game, you could have 3 items or only 2, depending on how much money was spent. And players also had the option of not choosing to spend money. Feedback was supportive of choices, but with the only exception of whenever they tried to spend more money than they had, in which case they had like an, oh no, try again type of response. What this game showed was practicality and spending money. Some notes on the game is that it gave positive reinforcement. It puts a real life situation and a game approach, so there's no real consequences, but it still shows that they could be given what would happen after a given action. Since it was done live in teams, it also allowed for teamwork and competition. Here's perspectives from Joanne McLean. The games work well when there's a story behind them. Our brains are wired for storytelling, and lessons are better remembered by these stories, which is part of why the Kiki's clothing game, why it works, is because Kiki had this situation where she was going to the mountains, and she had to pick out an outfit for the mountains. Next up, we have a personal communication that I had with Darby Renley before she's currently at the DVR, but before that, she used to work at a commercial laundry center for Goodwill, and she used a gamified approach to increase productivity and behaviors. The game didn't have a name, but she just gamified the job for people with disabilities for 12 weeks. She used tokens or coins that employees could earn and put in their bags to exchange for prizes at the end of the week. Tokens were earned depending on their progress, and the baselines for folding laundry were used to monitor how progress is measured. So for example, there was a timing of how long it took to fold towels, and then it was measured against that baseline. 10 tokens could be exchanged for $1 prize, such as candy bars, and 20 tokens could be exchanged for $5 prizes or gift cards. There was also the Go for the Gold leaderboard. The leaderboard created was to help individuals graduate from the intervention by awarding stars at the end of each week. You could get gold, silver, or bronze. If you got sustained gold stars, you graduated from the program. The individual boards that belonged to each person also monitored behaviors, such as focusing on the task, attendance, being appropriate, kind, and positive, as well as producing good work. To monitor all these different items, there was a gamification specialist supervisor. They monitored progress while coaching and rewarding the employees. Lastly, there were break time activities. This provided an opportunity for people with IDD to just have something to do during their break. There was it was just a time of a break, something fun to do. Here's some perspectives from Darby. It was successful the year that it was completed. And it was integrated across the entire laundry. So not just people with developmental disorders would participate, but even neurotypical people would participate because it was fun. It increased both productivity and motivation. And even after graduating from the program, individuals wanted to know what the break activity was, showing that they were still interested in wanting to participate in this, even after graduation. Promotion from other employees and positive connection. At this point, she talked about how important it was that the different employees, whether they had a disability or not, were encouraging and creating a positive environment. And that really it really benefited people with IDD. Lastly, we have the Employable Project. This was by far probably one of the most interesting ones that I saw. There was actually a point where I actually showed it to Christine Cook earlier in the week, who was part of this presentation. But this was the use of an online game called Second Life to help people with disabilities through the entire employment process. It was funded by the Kessler Foundation. And my point of contact for this was Dr. Thomas Conway, who's now a retired professor from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. So Second Life, to give some feedback, some background, is an online virtual game where players can create their own avatar and explore the virtual world. Virtual Ability Inc., who was part of this project, created islands for the purpose of vocational training of individuals with disabilities. And over 2 years, there were 50 participants ranging in disability who were blind, deaf, had TBI, or had autism spectrum disorder, and were located variously throughout the nation, such as Florida, New York, New Jersey, and Colorado. Virtual Ability Inc. created 2 main islands. The first was Virtual Orientation Islands, where players learned how to play the game. And then you had Virtual Ability Island, where players start the employment process. So just to go through the entire process with you very quickly, in the process, you had Orientation Island, where you learn controls and you get whatever items best represent the player, including wheelchairs. So you really could dive into, the person with a disability could dive into their identity in this online virtual game. Next, we go to Virtual Ability Island. You have the Welcome Center, where you learn about the Employable Project and funders. Then you go to the Skills Builder Building. Sorry, it's a bit of a tongue twister there. Skills Builder Building. And you start with hearing lectures about the employment process. Matchmaker Building, where employees with disabilities, employers, and mentors can check and connect. Then you have the Access Info Building, where employees with disabilities can practice job interviews, create resumes, and get the necessary supports that they need. And lastly, you have the Plaza, where people get to sort of practice skills where you want to work in various industries, such as, and there are various industries throughout the Plaza, such as construction, hospitality, healthcare, printing and publishing, study hall. I'm sorry, not study hall, city hall. Sorry, got school on the brain. Post office, credit union, IT services, security, clothing retail, and restaurants. Here are a couple perspectives from Dr. Thomas Conway. People with ASD found it easier, and that they would go through the job interviews sometimes 3 to 4 times for feedback, showing that they really enjoyed it. Working with mentors and groups was probably the most effective aspect of the intervention. So as I mentioned with the Skills Builder Building, with the Matchmaker Building, where employees with disabilities, employers, and mentors all got to check in with each other, that was probably one of the most effective aspects of it, because it provided feedback and it provided community. Now, here is Anti-Abor's question. After listening to my apprentices, can you match the intervention type to the correct apprentice who spoke of it? Let's start with Financier. What did Financier talk about? Was it low-tech gamification of a specific job, number 1? Was it number 2, online game used to gamify the employment process? Or number 3, a serious game to help understand finance? Go ahead and put in the chat which one you think it is. Okay, Katie thinks it's number 1. Anybody else? Nathan thinks it's number 1. Financier actually discussed a serious game to help understand finance. That was the one where we talked about the Financial Health Institute, and we brought in Kiki's shopping game, and it helped people with IDD understand financial wellness. Next, let's go to Laundress. Laundress over here, did he go over a low-tech gamification of a specific job, an online game used to gamify, or an online game used to gamify the employment process? Yeah, Carol, number 1. That is, sorry. Sometimes if you go to certain points, you will go back. Lastly, Avatarian. He used an online game to gamify the employment process. I'll go ahead and give this one to y'all. Yep, number 2. The three apprentices disappear and Anti-Boar stands alone in front of you. One final question now. Impressive job, adventurers. I'd be glad to give Martino back his key of understanding. Just answer me this last question. What are the next steps for research when looking at the gamification of vocational training and employment for individuals with neurodevelopmental disabilities? We can look at cross-analysis of the octalysis of motivation with peer-reviewed evidence-based practices and gamified interventions. More widespread application of previously used gamification techniques followed by peer-reviewed research. Advocating for employers to use gamified techniques in their employment process for people with ND or neurodevelopmental disabilities, or applying the research of gamification in serious games more directly to transition age youth with neurodevelopmental disabilities through implementation and peer-reviewed study. Or all of the above. What do you guys think? Is it one of these items or all of these items? Go ahead and put in the chat. You can just say all, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, all of the above. With that, we got the key of understanding. Now, before we get to questions, you and Martino have worked hard on this adventure, but we want to know how to make it better. We have the evaluation set out. I believe somebody, either Brian or Tiffany, is going to send out the evaluation. And if you guys wouldn't mind just taking a second to fill it out, I would greatly appreciate it. But with that all being done, thanks you for playing. That was my presentation. I'll give it back to Brian or Tiffany or whoever wants to take over next.
Thank you so much, Joseph. We appreciate it. So with that, that does conclude our presentation today. So we are going to move into the Q&A, the question and answer portion of the webinar. I will point out that in the chat earlier, Dina put a link in there so that you have access to the materials from today's webinar, the handouts. So be sure to review those, because at the very end, we do have some links, as we mentioned, on some resources. So we want you to go there. But beyond that, is there any questions that you have for Brian and I or Joseph on his gamification as an intervention and innovative approach to employment services for people with disabilities? So any thoughts, questions, you can unmute or put it in the chat. Nathan says in the chat, excellent gamification presentation. Nice work, Joseph. Yes. All right, I am not seeing any additional comments come through in the chat. And no hands are raised. You can always raise hands here too. So, oh, here we go. Paul says, we have had job coach providers say our son's accommodations are too narrow and no employer can meet that. So, Paul, is there your question around, any suggestions on potentially using that, maybe a gamification approach with that. And I will jump back for a quick second too. I love the fact that you say he has amazing skills. And I think sometimes there's a big advocacy piece around letting people know those hidden skills and hidden talents. And part of that employment search is making sure those are very front and center. Sometimes a lot of reputation is so focused on a disability and the things that we can't do, that we're trying to reframe that and promote, no, these are the things that we can do and we're good at. There's all things, every human I've ever met have things that they're good at and things they're not so good at. But we typically don't go around sharing the things that we're not so good at. But for a person that has a disability, sometimes it's very evident and prominent in a conversation. And so we're trying to change that. We want to change the script a little bit and lead with all of the things that they're very good at, those skills. And so I think, having good open conversations with an employer or a job coach to really look at, differences in ways of providing accommodations that are going to help support your son's amazing skills. And of course, Brian or Joseph, if you have anything additional to add there, you can chime in too.
Yeah, Paul, I think Tiffany covered that really well. I'm stuck on the word too narrow, and that's just me, wanting to understand and then have more information to be able to provide some ideas or thoughts. But I think that Job Accommodation Network website, askjohn.org, you can research that and look into that information. You could also send that to job coaches as well, to maybe start generating some ideas. But again, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to, we're happy to provide some ideas or thoughts around your question.
Excuse me, sorry about that. Thank you, Brian. We also have a couple more questions here now popping in. So Ellen says, can we access the games you mentioned? So Joseph, I'll let you talk a little bit about those.
So yeah, Ellen, to answer your question, I am not 100% sure, because this was really just an exploratory study on just seeing what is out there. The actual gamified interventions are out there. I mean, they've been studied, as been showed by the research, but getting access to them, I'm not 100% sure. Especially because, for example, the Puzzle Walk app that I mentioned, that study was completed, I believe in 2021. I'll have to double check, but it was completed just recently. So they're still working on developing these games. It's really what I've been finding through my research is that gamification and the use of serious games, especially within vocational training, is still very new. So there's still some study going on behind it. And one of the cornerstones of being a rehab counselor is to use evidence-based practice. So that is what I have for that. I also see Christine Cook. Do you have information on gamification applied to general life skills like hygiene or nutrition? I am looking into that, actually, because especially within and outside of rehabilitation, or I'm sorry, yeah, vocational rehabilitation, hygiene is an important part. And actually, in the intervention from Dr. Thomas Conway, the one that used Second Life, there was a piece that did talk about through that employment process about what it looks like to show up for an interview. You get to choose how you look. You get to choose whether you brush your teeth as through your avatar, and you choose how you present yourself when you get in front of the employer. So that's sort of the closest thing I have right now. Let's see. Roberta asks, how do you support someone who needs support and need to have their own person? Are you talking about a caretaker, Roberta?
No, I personally have a learning disability, and I need somebody to kind of be my secretary or be there with me to help me out with different things. And a lot of employers don't want to hire somebody else just to be there to be an extra support for me, or to navigate and give more work on another person in there already that's there. They feel like it's overwhelming. So I have a hard time even just progressing in my own profession, because I need that extra support of another person.
Thanks for that, Roberta. That's helpful to know that. So there are different supports here in Colorado that can support more long-term on a job. So here in Colorado, we have the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing, and they help to monitor our home and community-based services waivers. And they facilitate those long-term services and supports waivers. And so to me, it kind of sounds like maybe seeking out to see if you would qualify for one of those waivers that then could help provide funding to have kind of what the term they use is a job coach. So you already have a job and you're just needing on-the-job supports. And so looking at different options. I know there's other entities out there that could potentially look at. I know technology is a really big one, looking at what kinds of smart devices could help provide that level of, whether it's taking notes or speech to text, text to speech, vice versa. technology is being utilized in a great manner as like a personal assistant sometimes for many people.
I was given a lot of that through DVR. And so I have a lot of those kind of services, but I still need really just need another person to be there. It's like I need a secretary to help keep me managed and put together and reading my stuff and making sure, that type of thing. But nobody has ever said that there's anything out there to have that kind of support. And I've just struggled with jobs and then lost jobs because I tried to do it without having a support and was deemed that I was incapable of my job. So it'd be neat to see more support, having that kind of thing for people like you. I love the fact that you guys were talking about everybody being where they're at and then having the opportunity to keep growing and keep growing. And I was somebody who was told I would never go to college and never amount to anything. I went to college 10 years ago because somebody saw something in me, and I became a preschool teacher and currently a director of a preschool. But I've bounced between 2 different jobs and being a director because the fact of not having like a secretary or somebody there to help or support me. And people think I'm, incapable of my job just because I struggle a little bit more than everybody else.
Thanks, Roberta, for that. I will mention in the chat, we have a subject matter expert on our team, Melanie Hansbrook, for benefits counseling. And so in the chat, she noted that if this applies to you, if you're on Social Security benefits and you pay for a support like an assistant at work, that it could be a work incentive used to maintain your Social Security benefit. So if you want more information, we can connect you with Melanie there. So great questions. Thank you, Roberta. Carol also mentions here in the chat, gamification could be a great part of the pre-employment transition services, PREETs, to do some of it independently. I loved Second Game. Is there studies we could participate in? Oh, great question. Joseph, do you know of any up and coming research studies for participation?
Unfortunately, I do not. That is part of my research as well. But currently I could not find, at least right now, any studies that are going on. However, I would love to do one someday. That'll be way down the line.
Thanks, Joseph. Appreciate that. Excellent. Any other thoughts or questions for us today? All right, I am not seeing anything come through or any hands raised saying that they just want to come off mute. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for your time today and registering and attending this webinar. We appreciate having the opportunity to tell you about these new innovative approaches when it comes to employment and health. And we wish you all a fabulous rest of your day. Thank you for coming. Bye.